Any disparaging comments in the following video involving cats, the elderly, Belgians, and Steve reviews are entirely in jest and do not reflect the views of Headphones UK Productions or its affiliates. Alright me darlings, well I made some mentions towards puppet-based shows in my previous video, so maybe it's time we have a full review dedicated to some sort of puppet-based media.
So are you finally going to review The Dark Crystal then?
No.
I will get to you while you sleep.
Instead, we're going to be looking at the short-lived BBC sitcom, Mongrels. I figured that you'd like watching this series. It's probably got a lot of stuff in it you could relate to. Way more than a bunch of dog-faced elf creatures battling giant vultures.
You're treading on very thin ice right now, my friend. And I'm standing by the bank of the river with a hammer in my hand.
Okay then. Let's get into the history. Quickly. Mongrels is the brainchild of Adam Miller, who started off as being an assistant director on many BBC shows in the 2000s, before eventually getting his big break to create his own show. As many of us would do when we get our big break, we decide to make an adult sitcom starring puppets of street animals. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Hey, it works for me.
His reasoning behind this was that he had a lot of incredibly dark and offensive humour lined up for his show, but he felt that if it was spoken through the mouths of cute animals, then it would take the sting out of those rough edges.
If it was humans, you would be locked off.
And make it seem like they could just get away with saying anything they wanted. As with most high-concept shows, he started off with a pilot which outlines the overall premise and characters of the series. The show is predominantly set in the back garden of a man named Gary, who owns an Afghan hound called Destiny, who is your typical self-absorbed, backbiting, in her case quite literally in some circumstances,
oh no, Destiny, no, the testicles, no!
and popular bitch.
Well, that's a bit harsh to call her a bitch.
But she is a bitch. That's what a female dog is called.
Oh, I get it now.
And she's a total whore, who often socialises with the various street animals that come into Gary's back garden. Nelson, a metrosexual and very airy-fairy fox who fancies himself middle class.
Seriously, call yourself a fox?
I am a fox. I just don't let it define me.
Carly, the fast-quipping and perfect put-down pigeon.
My Destiny, you are some kind of slag.
Marion, the naive and, as the show puts it, borderline retarded cat, who is Nelson's best friend. And Vince, Nelson's fellow fox friend, and possible brother. They're quite vague on whether or not they're related or not.
If they are, it would make what they did on that island all the more shocking.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves now, Huck. Who is a foul-mouthed, thuggish, headstrong fox who doesn't care about doing anything, but does fly into a rage if anybody calls him a
Who you calling a
A what?
A
Nope, didn't catch that. Every time you say that, all I hear is a high-pitched beeping sound.
Oh yeah, that's just a weird speech impediment I've got. I can't say or either. The pilot lays out the basic formula in how the plots are based around the various issues that these guys face, and some even getting used again in the main series, like Marion getting in with a new owner and them wanting him to be neutered. Well, that may suck, but at least you won't be making any new cats, which is a good thing. Though as is typical with the pilot, there are some things that got changed for the main series. The pilot shows Gary as being married, but in the main series he's single. Either that or she died between those episodes, which would explain this joke.
You've got a dead wife, you've got a dead wife.
He's now a pub landlord, so the back garden set is the back of his pub, so it looks a lot more urban and trashy. Marion, Carly and Destiny all have different puppets, which was probably for the best, especially for Destiny, who looked like one of those creepy singing dogs from the Nestle Christmas ads.
Nestle makes the very best.
But the most significant change is to Marion's voice and mannerisms, as he went from sounding like a typical East Londoner
Yo, Nels, I found some of that sparkly silver glitter glue you're always on about.
to having a very exaggerated Middle Eastern accent.
Christ Jesus, it's a Premier Inn.
I demand to speak to Lenny Henry.
They explain this in the behind the scenes that his character is a Persian cat, so the new voice actor thought it'd be funny to do an impression of Omar Jalili for his voice.
Not a very good impression, but I did an impression of Omar Jalili, essentially. And it's sort of stuck.
It's so great to be here with all you guys. She is a liar and a coward and the daughter of 1,000 godless, acne-ridden whores.
It was a choice for the better, to be honest. The pilot version of Marion was a rather unremarkable character. but now he's hilarious.
I'm getting surgically castrated. Nothing? No? Wow, tough crowd.
Though, of course, he's not voiced by an actual Persian, and Carly, despite sounding like a black Londoner, isn't actually voiced by a black woman.
No, even if I had, you killed a toddler.
But who cares? They both do great jobs and are hilarious, so no need to make any more self-indulgent documentaries about that.
I'm not even really a fox. I'm a cat that's been painted orange.
Really?
No, not really.
Despite these changes, pretty much everything else in the show stayed the same. The characters' personalities and the way they interact off of each other, the stories and the overall story structure, and of course, the comedy. Though, to be honest, given the look of the set and the show's premise, this just makes me think that the classic children's educational show Cat's Eyes has just fallen on really hard times. I mean, hell, Marion even looks identical to Jimmy.
Ah! No, not me. Take him. Come on, you wouldn't mind being a guinea pig, would you? No, I like being a cat.
I guess after the series got cancelled, he ate Duke and changed his accent so no one would ever find him. Mongrels adopts the typical British sitcom format of having a group of characters firing off witty dialogue, which are all tied together with the particular circumstance, or situation, that the episode is based around. It does do something a bit different compared to British sitcoms, at least the classic ones, in that there are often multiple plots running throughout the same episode. This is more common these days, as it was a lot more common in American sitcoms back then as well, but at the time, British sitcoms didn't quite do that as much, and they were definitely ambitious with it because there's often up to 4 or even more plots going on at the same time in one episode, all centered around the individual characters. Admittedly, doing this does result in the individual plots being spread a little bit thin, and they aren't allowed to develop as much, but this is a very surrealist sitcom. Character and story development clearly weren't the big priorities here, so this does still capture the classic British sitcom element where at the end of each episode, everything is pretty much back to the way it already was. The only major plot element to have happened in one episode that persists throughout the rest of the series is Marion getting his balls chopped off, which does occasionally come up again in a few later episodes. The jokes themselves basically go into just about anything the writers think that they can mix into this premise. Not just jokes about the animals themselves, but showbiz news, political news, social satire, movie and TV parodies, even mocking a beloved fellow fox puppet.
That's the fascinating thing, Mr. Nelson. There's no evidence.
Right.
6 million dead, not a single gas chamber.
So, Basil Brush is a Holocaust truther? I did not expect that.
No, I expected him to be more of an anti-vaxxer. I mean, he acts all posh, but lives in a townie flat with a dysfunctional family. He certainly seems the type.
And that should give you a bit of an indication on the tone of these jokes, because they can be pretty near the knuckle. However, with a combination of a very surreal premise, the offsetting of the cute puppets in relation to this very dark writing, and the legitimately excellent performance by both the puppet operators and their voice actors, it really makes the dark elements of these jokes feel a little bit less dark, or at the very least you just don't care and you laugh along with them.
Okay, you try telling a male crow from a female one. It's like playing Spot the Belgian at an international incest convention.
Nice knock against the Belgians there. You could have also had Chocolate Convention, Pedo Convention, or Absolute Waste of Flesh that the world would do better without Convention.
You must be a regular at that one.
Yes, I am, as it happens. I've always had the philosophy that anything can be made funny so long as it's done right. There are 3 big no-nos for any comedian in terms of topics to make a joke about, and those are rape, paedophilia, and abortion. And Mongrels does jokes on all of those topics, and in all honesty, most of them are actually pretty good. I'm not saying that they're jokes that everybody could enjoy, but again, like I said, the combination of the performances and the presentation really helps take the roughness out of those subject matters. It's the same kind of thing that made Peeperdoo work, though admittedly, these characters don't go quite that extreme, though they certainly get close to it in a few episodes. As I said before, the voice actors are incredible. Nelson's voice actor does a brilliant job with Nelson's incredibly flowery, effeminate, and almost slightly condescending tone.
I will bloody kick myself if I don't ask. Why did the chicken cross the road?
Because there's a black person coming and I'm scared he's gonna mug me.
Dan Tetzel's voice as Marion is hilarious in just how exaggerated his accent is, and just gives it the perfect amount of punctuation and accents to the end of his words to make them sound funny, but it never goes into the realm of annoying.
The rats. They have taken me as their god and elected me all-powerful Holy Emperor of entire tip.
Admittedly, the accent does seem to limit how much emotion he can project into Marion's voice, but generally Marion doesn't have a lot of the most emotional parts of the show anyway, so it works out. Plus, he's a surprisingly really good singer.
What a difference a day makes. Then we can legally fornicate.
Lucy Montgomery does the voice of Destiny, whose voice kind of reminds me a little bit of Catherine Tate's portrayal of Becky Cooper from her old sketch show, just a little less exaggerated and, ironically, despite coming from a puppet, feeling more like an actual person rather than a character. And she is great at verbally expressing not only Destiny's ego, but also her bitterness and vitriolic nature.
For some time now, I've made it clear I don't fancy you. I've expressed this through verbal abuse, physical violence, and in one case, by having 6 tons of toxic sludge deposited in your den.
Katie Brown's performance as Carly is so wonderfully exaggerated and just has the perfect delivery with all the great insults she has.
There's people out there who can help addicts like you. They're called pimps! Yes! Bo, get in!
And then there's Paul Kaye as Vince, who easily has the best performance out of all the main characters. And I could go into detail as why, but really all you need to do is watch him and you'll just know how entertaining he is.
3 things. You, Sandra Bullock, and your fancy dress shop deposit.
Maybe I should copy him and start swearing more. Right, you
Oh, you've got the same speech impediment that I do.
Pantaloons? Where'd you even find pantaloons?
And of course, like any high-concept BBC comedy, they have a bunch of celebrity cameos in there. Though they do manage them in quite well, and they usually are very funny, mostly because they don't seem too ashamed or egocentric to make fun of themselves in the show. I think my favourite is probably Terry Nutkin's cameo during a cutaway gag where he's about to perform surgery on Nelson.
When I find the blockage, I've got to blast it away with this 9mm Glock gun.
Maybe Nelson took exception to this and that's how Terry lost his fingers. That or Paul Ross's cameo, which is just brilliantly harsh and bleak.
Do you happen to know anyone off the telly? Anyone? At all? No?
And probably an accurate depiction of his life, to be honest. And Danny Dyer also makes a cameo where he sadly probably gives the best performance of his career.
Danny, me old Vince, you big mate, it's been too long. Too right, it's been too long.
He appeared in Run for Your Wife only 1 year later. What happened, mate? Much like The Simpsons, most of the voice actors also provide the voices for other one-off or supporting characters that pop up throughout the series. Most significantly, Dan Tetzel, who not only voices most of the amount of characters, but when I found out some of the characters he voiced, I was legitimately amazed because they sound completely different from one another.
Oh, Mississippi Fried Chicken. Sorry, I could have sworn you said Nightmare Abbey.
Even some of the best voice actors I've ever seen, you can normally recognize their voices after a while because there's little elements to them that just make them familiar. Dan, on the other hand, I genuinely struggle to figure out if it's his voice or not with some of these characters because he has a surprisingly decent range. But the reason that they're all so good is that they can make what they say sound so believable, which is impressive considering that the stuff they have to say throughout the series can sometimes be absolutely ridiculous, and most of the plots for the episodes are insane, but they're done so well and they're so entertaining. Such as Destiny sniffing the arse of every dog in London because she finds it's the quickest shortcut to dating, Marion trying desperately hard not to die in a day because he's down to his last life and the kitten he's dating isn't of legal age until the following day, Carly trying to murder Harry Hill because her mum was caught on camera being killed by a bolt of lightning on You've Been Framed, or Nelson trying to look after the runt of Vince's litter because he ate all of his other kids because he couldn't find a spoon.
Vince, you've got Muller rice. Well, yeah, but no spoons. In my defence, they are both rhubarb.
Something tells me you're the runt of your litter.
Are you kidding? All my siblings look upon me with so much jealousy. I'm in showbiz, while they're still fighting each other over who gets the last piece of moldy chicken.
Yeah, but you still eat moldy chicken.
Well, yeah, it's tasty. Of course I'm still gonna eat it.
I just wish you'd eat more mince. I can smell it on your breath from here.
And I can smell the Marmite on yours from here.
Touché.
Look what I just found. A spoon. So, it was a senseless waste of life after all. Oh dear.
You can tell this is a show where the writers just completely forgot any sense of restraint and just had as much fun as they could with the writing. But they were clearly very good writers, and they were able to make this all seem coherent, and still have an air of intelligence and wit about it, even within this ridiculousness and smuttiness. And the whole show does feel like it's got the perfect pace for it. It's not so fast that you can't keep up with it, but it's not so slow that it becomes boring and tedious to watch. But of course, the true highlight of the show are the incredible puppets and their amazing portrayal by their various operators. These may be some of the best puppets I've ever seen in just about anything, and granted they don't have quite the same amount of complexities, details, or ability to emote as well as some puppets you see in something like LucasArts or a Jim Henson film, but that actually works out perfect because it's exactly the kind of puppetry that is required for this sort of show and its writing. The eyes carry a lot of the emotion, and they have really advanced and versatile eyelids, and it can really convey some great amounts of emotion. Even when the mouths are rigid and even the ears don't move a lot of the time, just those eyelids alone are enough to make them feel real. And like I said, their operation is excellent. Not just fast and expressive, but also smooth and done with a great sense of purpose. It's easy to be quick and expressive with puppets, but if that's all you want, you might as well just use sock puppets.
Why didn't you do that for your early videos?
Because given my health at the time, I really didn't want to get athlete's hand. Not to mention, they react off of each other so well, which is really hard since, of course, the operators can't really see each other's or even their own performances very well most of the time, as, of course, all you can see is from a very low angle, so you can't really get the best idea of how everything looks from the viewer's perspective. So being able to bounce your motions off of someone else and vice versa, that is really hard in that situation. Imagine trying to play pin the tail on the donkey over a minefield and you'll get the idea. Which is also what it's like having sex with a blindfold and trying to get the right hole. What? Now, there is a movie that I have to mention in relation to this show, which is Meet the Feebles. Feebles is very similar, with it also being a dark adult comedy with puppet characters, and yet that movie gives me PTSD just thinking about it, and yet this show I can't get enough of. Hell, even some of the plots of some episodes are very similar to various subplots from Feebles, like Nelson's doctor mixing up his test results when he gets rabies, Marion having an illegitimate child, Carly being so fat that she kills people, and Vince, well, Vince is more or less just a missing character from Feebles.
Maybe Nelson is Sebastian from Feebles going under a new identity after the events of the movie. That would explain why he and Vince are sort of but not really brothers. He's just been assigned to his new identity.
Could be. He is strikingly similar, even down to the whole metrosexual thing, but hopefully he doesn't start singing songs about sodomy. I think what makes this show work and that movie not work is the cheaper production value helps make it seem a bit more cartoony and unreal, so it helps make it seem less disturbing. And two, the whole show is done with a much more laid back and satirical tone, whereas Feebles was done much more theatrically and over the top, which made the more disturbing parts less funny and more, well, disturbing. It did have its moments, I will grant you, but this was yet another Guest House Paradiso situation where when I watched it as a kid, I didn't get over it for several months.
I want that fudge packer eliminated.
Speaking of which, every episode includes a song, which was a very popular trait of BBC sitcoms and comedy series of that era, and they're legitimately all really good. Each one does a different style or theme to them, and in some cases, what particular genre of music it is actually plays into the joke, such as the song Everybody Loves a Lesbian done in the style of a country western song.
It's so wrong when you see boys kissing, but girl on girl, see what you're missing. Lindsay Lohan never stopped traffic till she rode Sam Ronson and came out Sapphic.
And the song I'm Gonna Murder Justin Bieber done in the style of a stereotypical teen ballad.
Could you even name one of his songs? The self-important little diva.
A lot of these songs are so damn catchy, I've actually caught myself singing them to myself every once in a while. Though admittedly with the lyrics of some of these songs, it's not something you want to get caught in public doing. Hell, the song Middle Class is Magical is so good, they were even invited to perform it live at the BBC Proms in 2010, and said live performance even included the puppets, and it's really impressive how much they were able to get them to move and switch them and the props out so quickly and so well coordinated, though it is slightly creepy that they don't have bottom halves.
Well, you don't have one either.
Yeah. The parts that you guys don't see are a total mess, believe me. And it's extra impressive how good the actors are at singing, since they have to bend their voices to sound like their characters they're playing and still singing cue. That is really tough.
He took me to Oxford and abused me in a pond.
I think that we all agree he is a massive um-diddlum-diddlum-diddlum.
Believe me, I once tried singing a rendition of Memories in the voice of the Honey Monster, and it took 2 weeks before I had the power of speech back again.
Memories like the corners of my mind.
They also use a lot of cutaway jokes similar to Family Guy and Scrubs, and like those shows, it can get a little bit annoying, but generally they don't go too overboard with it, and unlike those shows, they're often very quick, and they keep the pace of the overall show very well. That being said, there are some jokes in the series that don't work, like the major running gag of Nelson having a crush on Destiny, and her loathing him. It doesn't lead to a lot of good jokes, and it's the most repetitive gag in the whole series. And it's also tough to watch because we know that it's never going to happen. And honestly, Nelson deserves better than her. If Destiny was more likable, maybe it could work, but she's made to be deliberately unlikable, so it just feels like a lot of wasted time that could be utilized on other jokes. There's also Marion's running joke of saying, "I understand," and then turning to the side and saying, "I do not understand."
Of course I knew that. I did not know that.
Funny how they bashed Harry Hill when they basically took his own punchline gimmick there. This can be a little bit funny, but it's done so often that the charm goes very quickly. In fact, the only major running joke that I still laugh at every time is Vince's foul mouth. I'd like to say that there's a deeper, more subverted and sophisticated element that makes it funny, but it is probably just the swearing alone, to be honest. And as much as I love this series, I can admit that the second series isn't as good as the first. It's not bad, but it feels like the writers were given more freedom in this series, and as a result, the jokes and plots aren't as tight and well crafted as the first series. There are some series that, once more creative freedom is given in the second series, things drastically improve, like Rick and Morty or Horrible Histories. But this is a show where I think the more restrictive hand on it actually helped a lot. Whereas the first series, I found almost every joke really funny. Here, it feels like there are several times where a joke doesn't land well at all.
I came up with a little serial killer gimmick and everything.
Let's hear it.
The Vampire Rapist!
Where's a rolling tumbleweed when you need one? There is one thing that is better in the second series, and that's the songs. The first series has some great songs, but this has by far the best songs in the whole show, including my favourite song of the whole bunch.
I think that we all agree he is a massive...
Not since I went to a Pussy Riot concert have I heard the word be used so beautifully in a song.
Why did you go to a Pussy Riot concert?
I went there thinking it was going to be something completely different. Now, there is something that I should address that caused a bit of a stir with this show, and that's its striking similarity to another adult puppet sitcom called Pets, which ran from 2003 to 2004 on Channel 4. To be fair, this wouldn't be the first time that the BBC have ripped off Channel 4. They also had a show called Cat's Eyes. But their version didn't have any puppets in it, so the BBC one is clearly superior, and the same goes for these two shows as well. Having seen Pets, there are definitely a lot of parallels you could draw from it. Not just from the concept, but some of the characters have similar personalities, similar interactions, and even similar dialogue in some cases. However, Mongrels is a comedic masterpiece, whereas Pets is a little bit awkward. I applaud them for trying something ambitious and different, but the timing isn't great, the performances are kind of phoned in, the jokes are rather hit and miss, and the puppets themselves just look like something you went down to the toy shop to get. All this from a channel that is always boasting they have more resources than the Beeb. Were they just saving the money so they could screw them over and buy Bake Off in the future? I can certainly understand the creators' frustration in how their idea was copied and done much better, but sometimes there are things that you just have to let go. I mean, you don't see me going on about how Steve Reviews basically does the same stuff that I do and gets way more views for it.
Yeah, you do. Like, all the time.
Shh! Don't ruin my point. Unfortunately, even the better production wasn't enough to save Mongrels from cancellation themselves, and in 2012 it was revealed that the show would be discontinued due to poor ratings. I know it seems silly for the BBC to concern themselves with ratings given how they get their money, but they still need to give the public what they want, so they'll keep buying TV licenses to keep watching. And to be fair, something like this...
Chickens, go back where they belong. Chickens, come all the way to Hong Kong.
Isn't going to get the old ladies who make up the majority of the Beeb's audience keep coming back.
Not that it matters now, since they're going to be dead in a few years anyway.
Oh, huck. That's just hitting too close to home for me. Still, we got 2 seasons and 18 episodes out of it, so we should probably appreciate what we got. And Adam Miller went on to be a director for the new Spitting Image, so clearly he's doing okay. But it is a shame that this great series got the chop so soon. I mean, this could have been the British Rick and Morty or Robot Chicken, but now it's just a forgotten footnote in the history of television. Still, probably for the best they didn't catch on, otherwise it would have inspired all the foxes around to start singing.
What, you think foxes can't sing?
Well, do you think you can?
Oh, just check this out. From YouTube down to Farthingwood, there's one thing plain to see. In this entire website, there's no mascot quite like me. Although it is a big surprise we don't get many hits.
Well, that's because they're all stolen by this boring little shit.
I started off by popping up all over the whole show, and now I am the guest host with a voice that says, let's go!
You upstage me at every opportunity you get, and pissing off all the guest stars that we have ever met.
He punched me!
Bit me!
Scratched me! He's pissed on all my stuff! He stole my lovely paintbrush and ruined my bluey fluff!
He took my only copy of The World Is Not Enough.
I think that we all agree he is a crap mask. One more time, people!
He punched me!
Bit me!
Scratched me! He's pissed on all my stuff! He stole my lovely paintbrush and ruined my bluey fluff!
He's tested every single ounce of patience that I've got. I think that we all agree he is a crap mascot.
I'm a mascot.